So we've previously viewed Athens through the lens of the two main lawgivers, Draco and Solon. And in terms of how the Greeks ruled themselves, our primary example has so far been Sparta. They were this oligarchy, the rule of the few, with their two kings, their council of elders, and the ephors. The thing people probably remember most in terms of government, they remember in their brains, I learned something about democracy. Athens conceived of the concept of democracy. Now, using them as the primary example, Athens is the most powerful and largest city-state in what's referred to as Attica. And Attica was in mainland Greece, a triangular region that's about 900 square miles. And to give you context, 900 square miles is about the size of Cape Town, South Africa. And it's about 3/4 the size of Yosemite National Park. So it's smaller than Yosemite is. There were mountains on two sides of Athens, and then the sea was on the other. So this is where we're going to start to see that there is some protection from the mountains. There's obviously that one side that is not afforded that protection, but the sea is going to provide them with options and strength. Now, we have a nice image here of the Acropolis. The citadel of Athens was known as the Acropolis, which translates to high city. And this high city, this Acropolis, is 150 meters above sea level. So it's the same height as the Washington Monument. It's nearly impregnable. And this, combined with its kind of bleak geography, will give Athens this independent streak. Now, when you look at democracy, it is a Greek term, it's a Greek word, and it was really only Athens that practiced what we would refer to as direct democracy on a large scale, because we're looking at this phrase, demos and kratos, common people, strength. It's very telling that common and strength are all a part of this. From the people, from the populace, we get strength. Democracy is confined to each city-state. Athens was the only one that really took it to the extreme, so they viewed themselves as superior to the other Greek-speaking city-states, and they would continually set out to prove it. Now, if you were politically inactive, if you didn't participate in the ecclesia or the General Assembly, and you weren't involved, you were viewed as unworthy of full citizenship. Now, ideally, you want a smaller city-state. If you ask the philosopher Aristotle, he was the guy who wrote down a lot of stuff about different Greek constitutions. Aristotle would say that the perfect size for a city-state was where all of its full citizens could be viewed when gathered together in one place for an assembly. So you could get everybody together in one spot. The philosopher Plato would have said about 5,000 people. That's a perfect size for a city-state to practice democracy. Now, the concept of representative democracy was foreign. This is what we mainly have in the United States, and we kind of got the idea from Rome, where you elect representatives to speak for the people. Athens didn't do that, because when democracy came to be, all eligible citizens would just get together and vote. That's how they did it. Now, when we say common people and strength, demos, kratos, when you look at it through the lens of Athenians, women were excluded. Medics or foreigners, people who are citizens of other city-states living within Athenian borders, they were excluded from the ecclesia and slaves could not vote. So they did have a limited idea of what democracy is when we look at it through a modern lens. But for the time, revolutionary. Absolutely revolutionary. Now, when we look at how it came to be, what we see here are the ruins of the agora. It's the open-air marketplace where goods can be purchased. And this is the gathering spot. This is the social and political center of the city-state. Now, depending on who you ask, agora either translates to assembly or meeting place. And the agora of Athens was actually in the background of the Acropolis. So this is also the remains of the agora. And there's the Parthenon, which is on the Acropolis. Solon, especially at least when Solon made it possible for anyone to bring a lawsuit, those who were the best speakers, the best orators with the powers of persuasion, they were the ones that were often hired to prosecute cases. This leads to professional orators. So you think of them as lawyers, professionals. This led to professionals being utilized. So the ability to think quickly on one's feet and persuade others is seen as critical. Democracy really gets going with the reforms of this man, Pericles. And the rule and reforms of Pericles are often viewed as kind of kicking off a golden age. Now, he assumes power at age 33. And for the next 33 years, so for 3 decades, he's the most influential leader. He alters democracy, first with citizenship. He made a citizenship law which stipulated that both of your parents had to be full citizens to pass it on. Previously, you needed your father to be a citizen, and that was all, but there were many many foreigners living in Athens, so he wanted to make citizenship more selective. The next thing, officials appointed by lot and paid. He decided that elected officials would be appointed by lot, by random selection. This was similar to Solon's reform, but remember, Solon asked each of the 4 tribes to submit names, and then they'd be chosen. Pericles wanted it totally random, completely up to fate. His goal is to provide every citizen with the opportunity to participate in daily life. And this is why they were then paid. If you are paid for your public service, the working poor, if they are elected, then can afford the ability to serve. Now, when it comes to jury parameters, at the start of each year, 6,000 volunteers are appointed by lot to sit in on juries. For the most important trials, you have 1,501 jurors, and it's a bit smaller for private suits. But any man age 30 or over can serve in the jury, and these were paid, so you can afford to leave your profession for a time to fulfill your civic duties, just like you're paid for jury duty today. Now, to have a fully functioning democracy, literacy is key. The Greeks were illiterate until the 700s BC, when the Greek alphabet was adopted. The Athenian constitution placed a priority on participation, accountability, and openness. And the economy is very diverse. So you need systems of reporting and documentation. Due to this dual nature, citizens of Athens need basic math skills for the accounting that the economy requires, and they need to be able to read and write to participate in democracy. And when you think about Sparta, by contrast, they didn't write anything down. They can't, quote-unquote, advance as much as the Athenians do. Athens doesn't fear change as much as Sparta within their democracy. Now, when you look at the downfalls or the pitfalls of direct democracy, well, aristocrats wanted a return to tyranny. The wealthy weren't necessarily fans of it, and they felt that a totally open government would lead to the mob mentality and rash decisions. the philosopher Plato completely disregarded the opinion of what he'd call the mob. He hated direct democracy because he saw how his mentor Socrates was treated in his later life, where, as Plato viewed it, the mob gave him a choice. See, Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth, and he was either told he could exile himself from Athens or commit suicide by drinking hemlock poisoning. So it's this fear of the mob mentality that serves as one of the perhaps downfalls of a true direct democracy.